Hello and welcome to PMI's Uncommon Sense podcast, tools to improve your work forever. I'm Susanna Clark, Managing Partner with PMI, the performance improvement consulting and training firm. Our Uncommon Sense podcast is a 15-minute conversation with our expert consultants. They talk a lot of common sense, although much of it is not common practice. And that's what this podcast is all about. We want you to be inspired to improve your business through learning more about the tools which can help you succeed and grow. Hello and welcome to PMI's podcast, Uncommon Sense, Tools to Improve Your Work Forever. I'm joined today by Des Kelly. Des, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. So Des Kelly, partner consultant with PMI and have been for the last 19 years or so. My background is automotive. I was formerly the Director of Quality and Process Development for Rolls-Royce and Bentley Motor Cars. And prior to that, had served a number of senior management roles within the automotive industry. And I lecture occasionally at the University of Warwick on advanced tools of quality.
Thank you, Des. For those of you who have joined us previously, you'll know that Des and I have been doing a series of podcasts on tools related to strategy deployment. If any of you haven't joined us before, or just to remind you, so strategy is, Des defines as the art of making deliberate decisions on what we will do and what we will not do, and breaks that down into three parts: understanding the world in which we operate, establishing the end goals and objectives, and the third area, which is what we're going to focus on today, is goal deployment and align the organisation. So today we're going to be talking about X matrices. So Des, can you start us off by giving us an introduction to what is an X matrix?
So what is an X matrix? Principally, it's a visual management tool. It's a way of communicating an awful lot of data in one sheet of paper. It is synonymous with the Hoshin Kanri approach, but Hoshin Kanri is just effectively direction setting for an organization, and is otherwise known as policy deployment or strategy deployment, but it is said to be known as Hoshin Kanri, and the X matrix is synonymous with Hoshin Kanri. Okay. So we use an X matrix to do what? So the purpose of an X matrix is it's intended to focus on the vital few breakthrough objectives that give the business its competitive advantage, based on the studying that we had from the previous two elements that you spoke of earlier. So the understanding the market and the environment that you're operating in, and then establishing what are the strategic choices, or what are your key goals. So it's intended to focus on those vital through breakthrough objectives, those vital few breakthrough objectives that you've got. So what's the difference between that and just having a list? Between an X matrix and having a list? Okay, so in which case, in a moment, we'll need to explain the construct of the X matrix. And I think it's fair to say at this point, most people get frightened by the apparent complexity of an X matrices, or the X matrix. And there's good reason for it, because frequently they're used incorrectly. And it sometimes requires a bit of insight, information and practice before they become really a usable tool. But the purpose of the X matrix is really to identify and articulate the intent of what the organization is planning to do, and then visually linking the vision and strategic objectives with some actionable activities which have owners and metrics assigned as well. So the list itself will not do all of those things. The list itself might give you what are the strategic objectives, but it may link it to the actionable activities, but it may not give you the owners and the matrices as easy as the X matrix does. There are other ways of doing it, a tree diagram, for example, can work very effectively for linking the vision to the objectives, which then have actionable activities, and you could assign owners and metrics to them. But what it does, it becomes rather a large document at that point.
Yeah. Okay.
But it still works. So the X matrix will help clarify whether there are any gaps in each of the breakthrough objectives or the strategic focus areas. And we want to be able to make sure that we can see if there's any gaps between the objectives and the actions that we're planning to take out. And if there are, we'll see it immediately, and we should be able to take some remedial action to make sure those gaps are closed.
And gaps could be where we don't have an owner assigned, or, for instance, so no one's actually moving that actionable piece.
That's precisely the point. It could be a lack of someone who's responsible for it, as you've just said. It could be that we actually don't have a way of knowing whether any change is an improvement. So it's quite a useful metric to be able to go around and see all this picture in one go.
Okay. And then you talked about measures as well. So you're assigning measures to each of the actionable goals. Is that right?
Absolutely right. So remember from our earlier conversation where we had the 3-question model. So remember we had what is it we're trying to accomplish, and then a measure. And then from that measure, we asked ourselves, so what are the actions or what are the things that we could do that will bring around that improvement? So we will have identified that within the Hoshin matrix. But then we've got the actions. How will we know that the actions are delivering what we thought they should? And therefore, they need to have a measure as well. So we have a goal with a measure and a means with a measure.
Okay.
And the X matrix helps us to identify that.
Right. I see. So it creates this visual picture that obviously can then be shared with anybody, presumably.
Ideally, yes. And what it does is it allows us to communicate on a broad basis those vital few things that are critical to the organisation and helps people align to them. In theory, the X matrix is used at a number of different levels, and they tend to be generally referred to as a level 1 matrix, which would be the one that is created by the most senior leadership team in the business. Then the level 2 matrix would be where some of those goals are being deployed throughout the organisation. Now, this is where many organisations fall over because they actually identify end goals with means or actions which are what I refer to as not deployable. That is, no one else can do it other than that little project group that's been assigned for that action. It won't need the involvement of anybody else. So most organisations get stuck at level 1 matrix. So I would say stay at level 1 if that's the size of the organisation. If you're a very large organisation, you may need to have a level 1 and a level 2 matrix. But if you're a small organisation, and small, I would say anything less than maybe 150, 200 people,
okay,
then you're probably going to be satisfied with just the level 1 matrix. You don't need to go down any deeper because the actions that you identify at level 1 are going to involve people in the organisation anyway, in the charters that you've got for those improvement activities.
And presumably that concept of we've got the goals and the means, and we're working at level 1, then turning that into goals and means at level 2 and so on. Is that what strategy cascade is referring to?
That is exactly what policy deployment, strategy cascade, or any other phrase that you would like to call up, what it's about. And it's about making sure that the actions of people in different levels of the organisation are tied into the vision and mission, then the strategic choices and the end goals that the leadership team have identified for delivering those strategic choices. Okay. So it is a cascading mechanism.
And presumably it's an essential part, isn't it? Because as we've talked before in previous podcasts, really important to define your strategy, understand what your priorities and goals are. But actually, if you don't get to the point of being able to cascade that in some way, cascade the actions to the different people that can carry them out, then you might as well not have a strategy.
Well, that is indeed it. If you've identified some objectives and you do not mobilise the organisation to deliver those objectives, they will sit around the leadership table and you'll be frustrated. So the key purpose about strategy deployment or policy deployment, however you want to phrase it, is about making a clear link between those strategic choices that you've made and what the end goal for those strategic choices has been determined as, and then engaging people in the means or the action by which those end goals are going to be delivered. And then we want to be able to measure whether those actions or means are actually being delivered. Are we getting what we felt we should get?
And so that's the job of the X Matrix, and then that's all rolling back up to the leadership team to keep them informed on how we're doing.
Well, yes, and the whole point about this is that the X Matrix is, if you like, just the communication medium for summarising the reviews that we hold on a monthly or bi-monthly basis of our progression of our strategic choices. So we use the X Matrix to make sure that we have covered off all of the strategic choices, have determined end goals, and have actions which are delivering them. And we can measure that so we know that any change is an improvement. But the X Matrix is purely there really so that we can keep a close focus on it, communicate it to everybody, get everybody involved, so they see the link between activities or actions that are being carried out on a day-to-day basis to ultimately the vision and mission of the organisation.
So, Des, you've referred to the vision and to linking the goals to the vision and so on, and then the deployable, the actions. So how does that all work together in the X Matrix?
Great question. So I'm going to try and paint a picture for you now. So if you can imagine a matrix, and it's an X matrix, and I'm going to give you north, south, east, and west grid references.
Okay.
So north, south, east, and west. Now, one of the things that we want to do is, first of all, define the vision and mission for the organisation. And then in the south area of our X matrix, the south side, we're going to show what our strategic choices are. And this is going to be the 5 or 6 things that you determine are absolutely critical for you to be able to deliver your vision or mission. And they'll be located in the south area. If you now move from clockwise, going to what is now the west side of my X, that's where we put our objectives or our end goals.
Okay.
Now, for every one of the strategic choices, you can have multiple end goals. You can have multiple end goals. So we would, our strategic choice is to do this, we will do this and this to achieve that strategic choice. Then, moving clockwise again to 12 o'clock or to the north side of the matrix, we then identify what are the actions for each of our end goal objectives. And then from the north to the east, or from 12 to 3 o'clock, probably the better way of explaining it, we then have our measures. What are the measures? So how will we know that the actions are progressing and delivering our end goal objectives?
Okay.
Adjacent to the measures on our east side is going to be who is accountable for delivering those actions. And therefore we can, if we like, we can now go up and we can say Des is responsible for delivering this action. I can put a cross in the matrix, so I can put a cross in my east and my north side to show how it's linking.
Okay, got it. Thank you very much.
Gives you all one picture in one go.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Des, that was great. That's a really great explanation. Thank you so much for going through that with me today. Thank you everyone for listening. If you have any questions, please do get in touch with us. If you want to ask Des a question about strategy, you can contact him via team@pmi.co.uk. We have lots of content on our Knowledge Hub. You can go there for videos. Our podcasts are all published there, our toolboxes, etc. So please do have a look on our website, pmi.co.uk, and go to the Knowledge Hub for more information. Thank you very much for joining us today. Des, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Suze.
See you again soon. Thank you so much for joining us. You can find more episodes of our Uncommon Sense Tools to Improve Your Work Forever in our Knowledge Hub on our website, or, of course, your favourite podcast platform. And do subscribe so you never miss an episode. Don't forget to check out the show notes for this episode, where you'll find links to more content on this topic, which includes webinar recordings, toolbox guides, blogs, and infographics, and our training page. You can always drop us a line on team@pmi.co.uk and arrange a time to have a call to talk about how these tools can help you in your organisation. We'd really love to hear from you.